Do we have too much government?
We need to put people ahead of corporate profits.
This system is so lopsided. This threat is a real threat to democracy.
And I think that's really important. That's something we haven't been doing in this country for a long time.
Where do you start? What do you do? How do you do it?
Access to Democracy and other Eagan community television programming is supported by Thomson Reuters, makers of Westlawn Next and based in Eagan. Through Westlawn Next and other innovative online services, Thomson Reuters is the world's leading source of intelligent information for businesses and professionals. Online at thomsonreuters.com. And by U.S. Federal Credit Union, the member-owned financial institution offering service, value, and experience you can trust to the greater Twin Cities community.
Welcome back to Access to Democracy, and welcome to Dr. Charles Crutchfield.
Thanks for having me.
Who has been with us. Well, you first came on in 2014.
Okay.
And after a couple of postponements because you were being called by the twins for emergencies, Dr. Crutchfield, a dermatologist, represents dermatology in terms of several sports teams locally. But the interesting thing about him is that he's one of the world's best dermatologists, acknowledged so. He's designated as one of the top 100 in this country. And there's a side of him, besides his dermatology, that we're going to talk about today with a little bit of dermatology, but as a philanthropist. And let's do a little background on you.
All right.
How did you find your way to the Mayo Clinic for your training?
You know, when I was in as an undergraduate, I did a summer research fellowship that year at the Mayo Clinic, and I really enjoyed working in the labs. It was from the old grants. It was one of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. They gave grants for undergraduates, and I spent a summer at the Mayo Clinic working in one of the research laboratories, and that was my introduction. Had a great project, a great mentor, really fell in love with Rochester, fell in love with the clinic, and that's when I decided I wanted to go there for graduate school and eventually medical school.
And you did?
I did. So the programs work. It was a nice introduction for me to see the Mayo Clinic and for them to see me as a student, and it set up the whole stage where I could go there later as a medical student.
And this has led to you writing books, including a very interesting book for children, dozens of articles, media appearances, ad infinitum, and as I said, you represent, or you are the dermatologist for several sports teams, the Twins. Is it the Wild also?
The Twins and the Wild and the Vikings and the Timberwolves and the Lynx.
Other than that, there are no sports teams locally. But so that covers it all.
Yeah.
Now, let's talk about a little bit about dermatology, and then we're going to get into a little bit more about the other side of Charles Crutchfield that the world doesn't know about.
Okay.
And we have some pictures here. There's a new treatment called Kybella treatment. What is that, and what does it do?
Well, it's an interesting treatment. It's a non-surgical treatment that's designed to dissolve away or melt away unwanted fat. And so in the past, we've used a similar procedure for the past 10 years in my clinic. And some people, if they've got love handles, or they've got a little tummy pouch, or some people say if they wear a tight sweater, they can see a little fat kind of above and below their bra with a tight sweater, or they call it under chin fullness, we call it a double chin. So that if you have specific areas of unwanted fat, it's real good at dissolving it away and melting it away. And in the early days, it came from a substance called phosphatidylcholine, and the common term we call is lecithin. And if you look at any candy bar, most candy bars will have lecithin as an ingredient because it's an emulsifying agent. It keeps the cocoa butter and keeps it emulsified. And so A long time ago, they were looking at different fat emboli, medically speaking, and fat accumulating in different areas, and they were trying to dissolve it, especially within the vascular bed. And they were using this lecithin to dissolve it, but they found that in order to get lecithin to become soluble, they had to add another ingredient called deoxycholate, which is a big word, but it's one of the major products of the gallbladder. And so they would put together this deoxycholate, we call it DC, and the phosphatidylcholine, call it PC. So they had a formula called PCDC. And they found that oftentimes that could melt away unlodged fat emboli in the vascular bed. But somebody thought, well, if it dissolves away fat inside veins, what about fat in unwanted areas, like love handles? And so that's where the whole field began about 15 years ago. And so you can inject this substance, and it causes the fat cells to break open, and it gets cleaned up, and it dissolves away over a week or two, 1 to 2 weeks. Also, the nice thing is, in many cases, but not always, but in many cases, the inflammation of the fat dissolving away causes the overlying skin to tighten up, which is really nice, because you don't want to inject an area with unwanted fat, and the fat goes away, but the skin is still saggy in that area. So it caused skin tightening and a melting away of fat. It doesn't work in everybody. A lot of times you need multiple treatments. Every 6 weeks you might need 2, 3, 4, 5 treatments. But it works. We have a nice result about 80% of the time. Not perfect, but about 80% of the time. And over the last 10 years, I and a colleague of mine, Dr. Khalid Mahmood, he recently passed away, but we had combined together with well over 5,000 to 8,000 treatments in the state of Minnesota. So we had a lot of experience doing it. There was another company that came out a few years ago, and they thought, well, some people just use the deoxycholate, the DC component, because that you don't have to add anything else to. And they found that that works too. So they went through all the FDA testing and got FDA approved. And so the trade name of their product is called Kybella. But that's one of the 2 components that we've used for years to melt away and dissolve and treat unwanted fat. And Kybella is kind of the newest treatment in the arena of aesthetic medicine.
And not only is it a new treatment, but it's one that basically doesn't have any adverse reactions on the body, as I understand it.
Technically it doesn't. It can have some profound swelling and tenderness in the area they treat. It's only FDA approved right now to treat double chins, or what they call under chin fullness. Now, many doctors, because it's FDA approved, can use it in other areas, but that's where it's FDA approved to be used. And in the area after the treatment, it can get really swollen, can get really tender and painful for a few days, even a couple weeks. But usually that all disappears and goes away. But that's the one side effect that we do see.
And it's not like these side effects that you see on television when they're advertising some of these pharmaceuticals.
That's right. That's right.
Where
Yeah.
when you hear everything that you might get, you don't want to use
don't want
that.
it. And they spend half the commercial telling you of all the bad things. So, I mean, there's certainly, anytime you interrupt the integrity of the skin, you can have bruising, bleeding, swelling, infection, scarring, and discoloration. And there are a lot of nerves that run under the chin, so you can get some profound bruising. And if you go, in certain cases, if there's irritation, cause a raspy voice and difficulty swallowing. That's extremely rare, but it's been reported. And that's one of the things you have to accept when you're going to do the treatment. And your doctor should discuss it with you.
And certainly, it's certainly important cosmetically to a lot of people.
Yes, it's an area that we've had very few good treatments for in the past. You could do surgical interventions and liposuction, but this is something nice you can do without any surgery. As one of my patients said, I'd like to treat this, but I don't want to go under the knife. And so this is a nice way. It's a series of injections every 4 to 6 weeks for a few injections to contour the area and shape it the way you want.
That's great. Now, we brought in, and you furnished us with a few examples.
Oh, good. Yes.
That we can look at on screen, and you can describe the conditions and tell us. There's a lot of before and after pictures. So
Okay,
there's the first one right there.
Well, this is a good start. This is something that we do in aesthetic medicine called a liquid facelift. And so this is a patient that came in to me, and she said, listen, I want to look a little bit fresher. I look in the mirror and I don't quite recognize her. What can I do to kind of brighten my look and kind of make things look a little bit nicer? And so we did several things for her. She had some moles on her cheek, and so we did a minor surgical procedure to take those off. And those are things called dermatosis papulosa nigra, and medically we call them DPNs. And they're real common. Condoleezza Rice has them, Morgan Freeman has them. So we did a minor surgical procedure to remove those. She also had some lines on her forehead and also between her eyebrows. And she said, I'm really tired of people asking me, why are you so angry? Or are you mad? What's wrong? Are you upset? And so sometimes you can have those two little faint lines between the eyebrows that makes you look stern or cross or angry. And so what we did is we used a little muscle relaxer, botulinum toxin or Botox, and we used a little filling agent, which is a sugar-based gel called hyaluronic acid. It's the same fluid that's in your joints. It's the same gel that's inside your eyes to give your eyes their shape. And so you can soften and relax the muscles so they don't form those deep lines between the eyebrows, and fill them in so at rest you don't see them. So if you look at the right-sided picture, you can see that the moles have been removed, and we filled in the lines between the eyebrows and relaxed the muscles.
Two different people.
Yes, and we also did a light laser treatment to smooth and tighten the skin, and I also did a little Botox in the forehead to take care of the forehead line. So she came back and she's so happy. She said, I look in the mirror now, and I recognize that woman, and I feel really good about the way I look.
Let's go to the next one.
This was an under chin treatment, a double chin treatment, and this is when we were using the combination formula PCDC, and we did injections under the chin. We did it every 6 weeks, and this was 4 sessions over about a 5-month period, maybe 6 months. And so she had a really, really nice response. She had a diminution in the unwanted adipose tissue under her chin and a tightening of the skin. So, you know, it's not absolutely perfect, but boy, it's a lot better than it was. And she said she felt a lot. She said she felt a lot better about the way she looked afterwards.
Let's go to the next one.
This was another variation on a thing we call the liquid facelift, but this one we did something a little bit different. We used something called platelet-rich plasma. Platelet-rich plasma is where you take a small aliquot of the patient's own blood and you spin it down, and you can concentrate their own cytokines and growth factors, and you can re-inject that back in the skin, and it causes some of the workhorses in the skin, fibroblasts, to produce more collagen and elastin to fill it in naturally. So we did the same thing between the eyebrows. We did a little Botox, a little filler, but around the mouth and the cheeks, we did a lot of the platelet-rich plasma. And that caused more collagen to be produced, more elastin to be produced. And then about 2 months later, we injected just a little bit of filler, the sugar-based gel on top, in the lips and around the mouth. And I think she had a remarkable result.
It certainly is. I mean, you would not recognize.
And
looks like the older sister on the left and the younger sister.
Yeah, you know, and that's so funny you say that, because there's one of the patients, I'm not sure if we have the picture, but she was from a small town. And in small towns, when they have class reunions, as you get older, they have groups. They don't have the same year, but they'll have from some groups. And she said at her last class reunion from high school, everybody thought that her older sister was her younger sister, and she was the older sister. And she said, I'm not going back to the next reunion, and they think that I'm somebody that I'm not. So we certainly do that. But the key, and I think with aesthetic medicine, is I tell patients, I want the look to be real soft and natural. I don't want you to look like you've had anything done or you're overdone. And I really believe less is more. And I tell my patients, if somebody thinks you've had something done, you've had too much done. It shouldn't look like you've had anything done.
Yeah, we've seen a lot of those with nose jobs and facelifts where...
oh, you know it, but it's so
Absolutely.
obvious. And this is another patient, and we really did a lot of PRP under her eyes. A lot of times you can see a concavity there and a darkening, and it works so well to fill in the eyes and around the mouth. And so we did a little Botox in the glabella, we did platelet-rich plasma under the eyes to fill in the concavities there, and around the mouth, and a little Juvederm in the lips. Once again, I don't think she looks overdone. I think she looks fresh, but not like she's had any major procedure. And the nice
She looks terrific.
Yeah, and there was no surgery here. So it was a 2-step process. We did it over a couple months, and I think she had a really, really nice result. And she said a lot of her friends and family were really complimentary, and her husband was very complimentary about it.
I think we have a few more, so let's
Okay.
take a look at them.
Yep. This too was another one. This was platelet-rich plasma, and we did it under the eyes. We certainly did it on the lower part of the cheeks and the chin. We really focused in there. And we did a filling agent for the lips, and we did a little Botox between the eyebrows and a little Botox in the forehead for a smoothing effect. The thing is, you can push it real hard, but then it looks artificial. So for her, we gave her a nice treatment. We really tried to soften her look, and it really made a big difference.
It made a big, big difference. And next we have...
This was another treatment where we did the under chin treatment, similar to Kybella. We used the PCDC here, and this was 4 treatments. The treatments were spaced out 6 weeks apart, and she too had a real nice result. She said, and most patients say, listen, this little thing under my chin, this is a family trait. Everybody, my uncle has it, my aunt has it, And this is a mark of our family.
I can say that also.
So, yeah, and I hear that all the time. So once again, we did a little treatment to dissolve away the under chin, double chin fat, and also to tighten the skin a little bit.
And do we have any more? There we go. We have another one here.
This was probably one of the first treatments we did. It was one of the most effective treatments. They all don't work like this, but she had a tremendous result. We did a filling agent and platelet-rich plasma on her chin to fill in that line that goes from the corner of her mouth to her chin. So we filled that in. And we didn't fill it in all the way, but you can see it looks a lot better. It's a lot softer. And then we did 6 treatments under the chin with PCDC, which is similar to the formulation we're using now with Kybella. And hers we spaced out about every 2 months. And so hers was almost a 1-year project. But boy, she had really nice results. And the double chin almost disappeared. And I have to say, this is one of our best results. They don't always work like this, but sometimes you hit a home run.
And this is definitely a home run with the bases loaded.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
Now, I think it's important for people to see this. And looks are superficial, but they're so important today, job-wise, otherwise, that it's good for people to know that there are things available to them
Sure.
like that.
And
Now, you
you're-
recently came back from Cuba.
Yes.
Tell us about that. What brought you there? And
Oh. What a nice time. My wife said, listen, let's try to find a good place to go. The kids have some time off for school. Let's go somewhere that we haven't gone before. A lot of times we'll go to Hawaii, we'll travel around the United States, go to Florida. But I said, let's try something new. I'd seen a special on TV about Cuba was opening up, and there's some things in the news that they're trying to change relations. And so my wife found a special small group of people that specialize in getting Americans to travel to Cuba. And it's called Cultural Island Travel. And so that's the name of the group, and they've got a website. My wife went on the website, and there's about 6 or 7 people that work there, and they specialize, and they arranged what's called an educational visa for us. There's no such thing to Cuba right now as a tourist visa, but an educational visa. So they lined it up. We had a private guide meet us at the airport. We had a private car take us around, but we went to different art galleries. We went to artist co-ops where the artists were creating and painting and working. We went to different farms. We saw the farmers and tobacco growers. We went to different restaurants around. We walked around Havana for a couple days and just met the people and felt what it was like to be there. It was just a wonderful, wonderful experience. The people were so warm. The music was amazing. The food was great. It was just a trip of a lifetime.
And that certainly is a good recommendation for Cuba.
Yeah, and the thing about Cuba is back in the 20s and 30s, it was probably one of the most beautiful cities in all of the Caribbean. And what happened
Talking about
was
Havana?
Havana,
Yeah.
But when the revolution came, they didn't keep things up. So it's like a city frozen in time. It's like stepping back into the 50s. Everything's beautiful, but it's in a slow state of decay. But the people are so warm and genuine, and it's really safe. I was kind of worried about that too, but I found out super safe in Cuba.
Well, I'd like to go there just to visit my 1955 Ford, but
It's still there. I saw a lot of them there. So, yeah. And a lot of people talk about the cars, the vintage cars, and they keep them immaculate. But a lot of times, because they don't have access to the American parts, there might be a Peugeot engine or a Russian motor and Russian exhaust, but they keep the cars running. And most of those cars you see in the pictures of Cuba, they are cabs, and so they're taxi cabs. You can take them around. And that's really nice too. And my daughter is a photographer, and she was fortunate enough to take about 1,000 pictures. And she's got a lot of her pictures got published this month in Artful Living magazine in the Twin Cities. And she currently has a series of photographs, probably a couple dozen, at the Westcott Library as we speak. And it's so funny because they just put it up, the show. I haven't seen it, but I had a patient today.
which is here in Egan.
It's right here in Egan at the Westcott Library. And I had a patient today, and she said, do you know somebody by the name of Olivia Crutchfield? And I said, well, that's my daughter. They said, well, do you know she's got a photo exhibit of Cuba in the Westcott Library? So we're going to go over and see it this weekend. But I heard
Well,
it was
I'm
very
going to go
nice.
check that out myself.
But anyway, so Cuba was nice, and the cars were fantastic.
Now, NBC recently designated you, not in terms of dermatology, but as one of the 100 most influential African Americans in the country. And that certainly has to be a
Yeah.
great honor.
I was very honored, very humbled to receive that. That was last year, and it's called the Griot Awards. And I think it has to do with it. I try to teach a lot, and I try to donate both time and resources to worthwhile projects. And I always accept students, and I was just happy that they recognized that.
Well, I think I should mention that every patient who comes to Crutchfield Dermatology is treated by Crutchfield.
Yes, I'm the only doctor there. I'm the only physician. As a result, sometimes we run a little bit late, and I hear from patients, and I certainly understand, but I try to give everybody the individual attention that they both want and deserve. And when you come to my clinic, I always see, if it's a medical appointment, you're always going to see me.
And you're usually trailed by an intern from the Mayo Clinic or
University of Minnesota, medical students,
right.
and I think it's so important. You know, I've got an appointment as an adjunct clinical professor at the University of Minnesota at the medical school, but I realized when I was coming along, I had to learn. And I was a student too, and I was following around people, and I was so fortunate to have so many great teachers that taught me things and took an interest in me and brought me under their wing and really helped me become the physician that I am today, and it's so important to give back. And I want to do the same thing for students coming behind me.
And talking about giving back, one of the things you do is you award scholarships.
Yes.
The High School for Recording Arts in St. Paul, David Ellis, who was just a guest on this show, told a wonderful story about 2 scholarships that you awarded to his students last year and how they have gone on from there.
Yes,
And
that was actually our 3rd year. And I'm so proud of Mr. Ellis. He and I have been friends since junior high school. And he's done great things. He's really set up this charter school that's been going strong now for 20 years and has received lots of accolades. But it's helping so many Minnesota students, so many students that were forgotten about or left out, and he's bringing them back into the educational system, and they're graduating high school, moving on and doing great things. And so we're actually doing named scholarships for great Twin Cities people. And the first year we gave the Katie McWatt Scholarship, and Katie McWatt was a great person, social activist and politician in St. Paul. We also gave the Mary Jackson Ellis Scholarship. She was the first African-American public school teacher in Minneapolis, and she got appointed by Hubert Humphrey. We did the Solon and Mabel Ellis, David's parents, scholarship this year to honor their contributions, and she was a foster mother to almost 50 kids. And his father was one of the leaders as a Pullman porter and also an entrepreneur. So we try to honor and recognize all the great people from the Twin Cities and carry on their legacy and put in the scholarships for these students in a school that's doing phenomenal things. I'm so proud of them and the work they do.
A fascinating man, wonderful, wonderful story, and your contribution there also is part of it. Now, we know that you have written books, we know that you have written articles, we know that you are tremendously involved in civic ventures. And as of February, you will be listed on our group of donors for a very generous donation that you gave to us to enable this program to continue. Because between the costs of our website and these cups, I mean, is a minor thing, and the volunteers and a party for the volunteers generally once a year, and the jerseys that we give them, it runs into money, and this volunteer effort has cost a lot of money over the years, so we are most appreciative
But the thing is,
of what you have done.
We appreciate what you do. I mean, this is an absolute landmark program. It's probably one of the longest running educational cable shows in the Twin Cities. Am I close?
They have to prop me up each week, but
that's great. And it does such a great job for everybody else. We're just happy to be a supporter.
Tell us the story of the $15,000 Parkinson's Challenge that Crutchfield sponsored.
Yeah, so every year we do a big a 5K walk, and a lot of the money will go for Parkinson's, and there's another one. Are you talking about the Bert Blyleven Challenge?
Yes.
Okay, so we do a 5K walk every year, and part of it's donated to Parkinson's research, part is donated to the Reading Center for people with dyslexia, that's in Rochester, and I've got dyslexia. And so that's one of the things I've had to struggle with. But the challenge with Bert Blyleven, somehow, some way, they got on the topic of eating
Hall of Fame pitcher announcer for the terrific announcer for the Twins.
And-
One of my
and
favorite
he's-
people in that regard.
And he's so good, and he's a friend of mine. I'm happy to call him a friend, but somehow on the air they're talking about eating earthworms. No, night crawlers.
Night crawlers.
Which are
Night
different than
crawlers, yeah.
earthworms. And so somebody said that he would give Bert $200 to eat a night crawler on the air. And he said, we can donate that because his father suffered with Parkinson's. So he said, we'll donate that to the Parkinson's Research Foundation. And I thought, I got to get it on this action. So I called in, I said, I'll donate X number of dollars too, and I challenged all the other physicians in the Twin Cities to match that. And before we know it, we'd raised $15,000 for the foundation. So, in honor of Bert's father, and we were happy to help out.
And
he
he raised all that money.
He
and
raised the money, and he ate the night crawlers, and he was surprised how big they were when they brought them. He says, these aren't worms, these are baby snakes.
And now when he walks into a restaurant,
That's
immediately he orders night crawlers.
Night crawlers. So,
Tell us about, well, you encourage your employees certainly to get involved in all kinds of charity walks as well.
yeah, and so that's the one, we'll support them in any type of charity event they're going into. We've actually developed our own, and we've been doing it now for the last 3 years. Every fall, we have what we call the most beautiful 5K in America. We usually do it in Lebanon Hills Park. And this year, it was absolutely stunning. It was 65 degrees, and all the fall colors are out. And we had all kinds of sponsors and food and events, and we had Nordy from the Wild come, and we had TC Bear come out, and all the kids were thrilled. We had magicians and balloons, and we try to, every year it's better and better, but it really goes to a good cause. It's supporting the Parkinson's Foundation, also Camp Knutson, which is a camp for children with skin diseases. It's a national camp. It's a beautiful camp. I don't know if you remember being a kid, but as a kid, when you go to camp, you take your shirt off and you're running on your shorts. But if you have a skin disease, you're embarrassed. But at this camp, every kid has a skin disease, so no one cares. Everybody takes their shirts off, they go swimming, and it's a great summer camp. And the campers, they fly them right on out to the camp. It's all taken care of. So we also, the 5K walk supports Camp
You're
Discovery.
involved in that. And Camp Discovery.
Yep, Camp Discovery is what we support. That's the camp for children with skin disorders.
And what about disabling texting while driving? Which
That's-
is one of your big concerns.
That's one of my big concerns. That, and we've got, and it's so frustrating because it happens all the time. And I'm driving down the freeway and cars are swerving all over, and you wonder what's going on. You look, and there they are, and they've got their phone on the steering wheel, tick, tick, tick. And one of the big ones, we thought, it's important for teenagers too, because teenagers are texting all the time. I've got a daughter, I think her phone is super glued to her hand. She can eat dinner with one hand and text with the other. It's amazing. But it's such a dangerous thing when you're out driving. Distracted driving kills 15 people a day in the United States.
25% of auto deaths from
Are from
distracted
distracted
driving.
So we're really looking at ways to disable phones when the car is in motion.
And we just have scratched the surface of what your civic involvement is, but we've also scratched down to the last 37 seconds
Oh boy!
of this half hour. So we'll look forward to the next one.
All right.
We've been talking to Dr. Charles Crutchfield, who practices here in Eagan, and who is not only known nationally but internationally. Always a pleasure.
Well, it's always a
And
pleasure to be here, and I'm a proud Eganite.
Come back soon, and thanks again.
Thanks so much.